as people are waking up here in New York City to find out that 4 people who were inside of that skyscraper behind me were shot and killed by a gunman. They're not going back home to their families, and they were just inside of that building in Midtown, working at 6:30 on a Monday when a gunman walked in. Authorities are telling us, Dana and Bill, that this gunman pulled up here and parked on Park Avenue, walked inside with an AR and opened fire, killing multiple people, and 3 people were just standing there in the lobby. We now know that the gunman actually left behind a note. We're hearing that it was in his pocket when his body was found, talking about what he says was issues he had from suffering from football. He says he had CTE from his time playing football in high school, and specifically mentioned the NFL. It's important to point out the NFL headquarters are right here, and that's what Mayor Eric Adams of New York City says is the reason this guy came here. Watch.
He alluded to having CTE from playing in the NFL. He never played in the NFL. We're still going through the suicide note to zero in on the exact reason, but at this time it appears as though something that is attached to his belief he experienced CTE from playing in the NFL.
And so that's the latest on why this might have happened, but that doesn't do anything for these poor families who lost loved ones. This is the gunman, Shane Tamira. Investigators tell us the 27-year-old drove to New York City from Nevada. He drove for several days just to get here. Inside of his car that was just double parked in front on Park Avenue, we're told, was medication, ammunition, and another gun. Investigators tell me those medicines were for Tamira's, quote, documented mental health history. This guy literally with an AR just walks right into the building. Nobody stopped them, and then he unloaded in the lobby there. The gunman sprayed the lobby with bullets, so much so that it shattered the glass. 3 of the 4 people who were killed were just standing there in the lobby. Among them, we now know 2 have been identified. Blackstone employee Wesley LaPotner. This woman was a brilliant and respected employee of Blackstone, the company says. She also leaves behind a husband and kids, so I can't imagine, getting that call yesterday that she wasn't coming back. NYPD officer Didarel Islam was also killed. He was only 36 years old, and he was working an extra job as security at this building. He was in uniform when this gunman walked in and opened fire. Islam was married with 2 little boys, and his wife was pregnant with their 3rd kid.
He was doing the job that we asked him to do. He put himself in harm's way. He made the ultimate sacrifice, shot in cold blood, wearing a uniform that stood for the promise that he made to this city.
And as those gunshots rang out, people inside tried to barricade themselves. They didn't know where this gunman was going to go next. They were running for their lives. People were making 911 calls. You can see on that screen next to me, that's computers, desks, chairs, couches that these employees of these companies threw up to try to block themselves in because they weren't sure if they were going to make it out alive. We do also know from the NYPD and the mayor this morning that he used the wrong elevator bank, so he could have gone up to another floor as well.
Hi, it's me, Wally the Wood Chipper. It's a fine day today when I sure do wonder when that list will come out. We got Russia, a shooter, and fake news CNN, but where are the Epstein clients? I'm starving. I'm getting pretty hungry. When are the Epstein files going to be released?
Jerry, that is some gallows humor, as we call it. This is not the time for a Pixar wood chipper, but I get the joke, and it's really funny. And there are some things you really can't joke about, except for the destruction of CNN. And we're going to talk about what should happen to CNN, who has now confirmed in me that structural racism is real. I agree. You know what? Unsubscribe if you want to. I am a massive proponent and believer now in structural racism as defined by Encyclopedia Britannica and Wikipedia, that says that large-scale institutions and organizations that are explicitly racist against one group of people, that is the definition of structural racism. I agree. And I can prove to you, and will prove to you very shortly, that CNN is explicitly racist to the point of wanting the death of white people. I can explain it to you. I can show you all of the evidence. And I can show you that the crimes, the horrific crimes and terrorism of other races are being blamed on white people live on CNN. Whilst when white people are being terrorized, CNN refuses to cover it. I have all of the records. I have all of the proof. We'll lay it out for you here. And we'll talk about what it looks like to actually deplatform someone. Boy, it was the F-roundest of times and the fine-outingest of times. Will CNN, who's led the deplatforming of so many of us, be the one to get deplatformed? Could they have violated law, actually? We'll talk about it today, Tuesday, July 29th, 2025. New York City mass shooter Shane Tamura found with a note blaming the NFL. We've confirmed now that that note is real, so now we can see a potential motive for this mass shooting that left 6 dead. CNN says he's white. I have proof otherwise. New Russiagate documents exposing Hillary Clinton. Imminent. What will happen with them? The target of those documents will be joining the program. General Flynn will be back on the show, along with Sean Davis, the editor and publisher of The Federalist, who's done the Lord's work on this topic, along with financial expert Kyle Bass to explain how President Trump has remade the world through his successful tariffs. Did you panic? Did you sell? I never sell. I'm not even creative, like, at all. I just never sell. I buy, like, American stocks, and that's it. That's my entire portfolio is just like, I take whatever scratch I get, I buy American stocks. I did it during COVID. I did it when everything was collapsing. I did it during the panic. And that's me. I believe in my country. I literally believe in my country. I hire Americans. I buy American. That's it. My coffee is American. This is not an ad. This is my coffee. It's all American. It's made down the street. I love this country. I believe in this country. That's America first. I put my money where my mouth is. Okay. But anyway, Kyle Bass, a financial expert, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about what's going on worldwide and why America first is so good and delicious, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Benny Johnson, and this is The Benny Show. Speaking of American financing can help you get out of debt today. Prices are extremely high. We had a funny meme last week that the Democrats shared about how they got so high. Joe Biden, obviously, and you remember the meme. Joe Biden is when all the prices skyrocketed, obviously, because the government went total spending retard mode during Joe Biden and decided to, Republicans and Democrats just decided to spend like there was no tomorrow. And the only creation of inflation is government spending. That's it. That's it. Government spending equals inflation. That's it. There's no other factors. Well, anyway, the point is that everything's gotten out of control and Americans are in steep credit card debt. You should call American Financing today. Before you get to the point where you can't make any payments, their salary-based mortgage consultants can help you out. Get out from underneath that massive rock of debt. No upfront fees. Their customers are saving an average of $800 a month. It's like a $10,000 raise per year. It's fast and simple. It could save your budget this summer before it's too late. Call today, 888-528-1219, 888-528-1219, AmericanFinancing.net/Benny. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Speaking of, well, financial markets, there was a building in New York City that was attacked yesterday by a lone gunman, and we don't think he was working with anybody else. There's no evidence to point to that. His name was Shane Tamura. I'm going to talk you through something very important about this tragedy. And it is a total tragedy, and we have a lot of news to cover. I think there's some interesting tie-ins with CTE and brain damage and so on, right? I'm not really squishy on those issues. But nonetheless, now we have a motive. It's a building, it's the Blackstone building. And it's in a very, very posh part of Manhattan Island, the most expensive zip code you can really find, actually. And that building, a gunman walked in with a rifle. It's kind of alarming that he was able to just walk right in with a rifle. Here's a photo of it. This gunman, his name's, again, Shane Tamura. He's a resident of Las Vegas. There's some speculation that he may have worked in the building at some point. He walked in the lobby and just started blasting away, right? He was carrying an M4 and he went up to the 33rd floor through the elevator bank. And then he decided to shoot a little bit more and then off himself. And that's the full story. And of course, this led to absolute panic and chaos in the street. This was something that obviously, you know, people can get things wrong. All right. And I want to try and be as fair as possible. We've gotten things wrong in the reporting of this. For instance, yesterday we reported on this story and we had to delete our recording, didn't we, Klein? We had to delete it because it contained information that was old and outdated. Yeah, we were editing it. We were about to go up with this breaking news. We deleted the whole thing, cost us an extra hour, but we wanted to get you the most accurate and fairest information. These things change. We sometimes get it wrong. We'll correct the record. We promise we will never, ever lie to you. Never. We'll tell you the truth, and sometimes the truth is brutal. We don't want to tell it to you. It sucks. Trump's been arrested again. Trump's been indicted. But we have to tell you the truth. All right? And that's the obligation of this show. It's what creates trust between us. We act like we legitimately care about you, and we care about you being knowledgeable about the world around you so you can make good decisions for your loved ones. Keep them out of harm's way, for instance. So someone got something wrong right off the dome here. And you can see here the chaos in the streets, right? People running around. There was, police everywhere. There were cops screaming, yelling. People were doing CPR in the streets. And police officers were being shot. It was awful. It was awful. And you can forgive people in the heat of the moment for getting things wrong. This suspect, this individual, this terrorist, this shooter, Shane Tamura, he went walking in here at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. At like 6:45, this image was shared on the internet. So like instantly, as the event was going on, we saw this image. And we heard the police scanner in our ear, the New York City police scanner, say, it's a Middle Eastern, maybe Indian guy, because that's what he looks like. And why is this important? Is it because we hate Indians and we hate Middle Easterners on this channel? Well, okay, you're going to have to explain our coverage of Trump in Dubai then, if that's the case, or Saudi Arabia, which we had a blast with, right? Yeah, that was fun. I mean, that was wild. Trump in Qatar. It's like fascinating thing. Remember the camel parade, the camelcade? Donald Trump in a camelcade? What's the point? The point is that it's like not like we're trying to unnecessarily slander people. It's because his hair's dark and his skin's dark. He's wearing glasses, and that's what people described him as. They saw him in the street. Yo, it's like looks like a Middle Eastern guy maybe. He's wearing a flak jacket. He's got like full arm cover and leg cover. So it's kind of hard to see what he looks like, whatever. That's what people said. That's what the police said. And that's what this image said. And this image was seconds after he started shooting. The whole world could see who this individual, what the description of the suspect was. It's really important to have the timeline down here because you can show motive given the available information. Now, people lie. People can lie. Again, people can say, "Yo, I thought he was a Middle Eastern guy," but it turns out that whatever. Okay, my heart was pumping, and I saw it, and whatever. The photo doesn't lie. The photograph, it's not 8K, but the photo doesn't lie. Why is this important? Well, it's important because if you say the wrong description of the suspect, let's say you have a huge broadcast network that can broadcast into every home in America, and you call yourself the most trusted name in news. If you report that the wrong race of a man is doing the shooting, then you could potentially start a stampede. You could get people killed. You could get innocent people killed. It's funny how it never happens with like Chinese people, right? CNN never makes this mistake going the other way. But lo and behold, given all of the available information, including the witnesses on the police scanner describing this individual as having dark skin and dark hair, CNN described him twice last night as white. Here we go.
They know he is a male, possibly white. He's wearing sunglasses. He appears to have a mustache. And that picture has been distributed to every police officer in New York City.
They do know what he looks like, male, possibly white, mustache, sunglasses, in that building, isolated to, they believe.
What do you mean possibly white? What possibly white means is we hope he's white so that we can blame Trump. We're praying, we're begging for him to be wearing a MAGA hat. We're like just begging on our knees for it. But they Jesse Smolletted. Here's an enhanced video, there's an enhanced photo of what CNN knew when they were talking. Did you hear that jackass on CNN? He says, according to this photo we've sent to all the cops, he's a white dude. What are you talking about, man? No, he's not. Like our eyes don't lie. Like people can lie. Our eyes don't lie. This photo doesn't lie. No, he's not. And why this is so egregious and why it's not just an innocent mistake is you could get people killed. Then suddenly a white guy comes out of the elevator and the building gets blasted by cops or whatever. It could really hurt people. You know, it's why CNN really, people should look into stripping their broadcast license. This stuff happens so much. And if it had gone the other way, you know that CNN would have their buildings burned to the ground. And it really reveals something endemic in our media that we've been covering over the last couple of days. That's why I believe in structural racism, actually. But a structural racism, not the way that the left wants to believe it, is structural racism against white people. CNN refuses to cover what happened in Cincinnati last night when white people were subjected to terrorism. According to all available evidence, even though they're screeching that it's not the case, we'll see. But according to all available evidence, there was a middle-aged white couples were systematically attacked by roaming groups of black teenagers in Cincinnati. It's on video. You're going to have to present to us some other evidence that controverts that. There is none available. And trust me, they are begging for more available evidence. CNN refuses to cover that story. So when white people are the victims, they refuse to cover it. If a black guy goes and shoots up a building, they'll say he's white. You know, it's a real problem. It's a saying in the news business, if it bleeds, it leads. What CNN wants is a race war. And they're begging to get it. And they're trying desperately. You can see here, click on that article, Killer Klein. CNN, Aaron Burnett up at the top. CNN, Aaron Burnett up at the top. No, it's the one that you were currently on. Please. Go up right there, up at the top. See Aaron Burnett, see your photo? There you go. CNN's Aaron Burnett flamed for saying New York City shooter Shane Tamura was possibly white. Like, would you say possibly Chinese or possibly, like, would you say possibly any other race? And what does that even mean, possibly white? Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, you have the photo that we have. Scroll down. You have the photo that we have. Here's Aaron Burnett. She was the one anchoring last night. She's like repeating it, and her guests are repeating it. They have the photo. You know, they have the evidence. There he is. Here's Shane Tamura, Mr. Possibly White, doing a interview as, shockingly to CNN, a black football player. Now we're going to get into some of the motive here. But it's worth taking a moment and pausing on this point and asking, you know, are they woke or do they just hate white people? And then how are you supposed to run a functional society if the corporate press is constantly hammering away at the majority group in this nation and castigating them as the villains? You can't have a functional country, in fact. We're going to get to the new mayor of New York City and what he wants to do to white people, but it's going to make this problem worse, obviously. You know, the villainization of racial groups is how you get the event in Cincinnati. It's how you get the George Floyd riots. All of them are connected, and it all has a specific purpose. You can go back and read Cloward Piven, where all of this stuff comes from, but it's all based on a Marxist critical theory. It's based on using the key it's why you have to hit against it. It's why you have to hit out and strike out against it as hard as you possibly can. It's based on what they see as the strategic weakness of this country, which is the lack of homogeneity. And communists always try and pit groups against each other. And they're able to be successful in places like Russia, obviously, the whites and the reds. In every communist and Marxist movement, they're able to do this. Go read the histories of North Korea or Cuba. This is how it always happens. They always follow this same strategy. It's laid out by Marx quite clearly. Destroy the church, destroy the family unit, destroy all of the things that harmonize society, and then stoke class hatred. Now, whether that class hatred is against, the workers versus the shop owners, or the people versus the king or the queen, the czars, or whether it's hatred of all white people. It's all part of a strategy that they view as a weakness in this country, and it's why it needs to be fought against and destroyed, in fact. It's how you get shootings like last night, beatings like we saw over the weekend in Cincinnati, all of the racial riots and angst. And by the way, when you look at the Gallup polling, you can see that there was one specific thing that caused race relations to collapse in this nation. And you're not going to be shocked by it at all. It was the presidency of Barack Obama. During the presidency of Barack Obama, race relations collapsed between blacks and whites in this country down to absolute historic lows. And they've been plunging ever since. It's because Barack Obama decided, as a Marxist, as somebody who believes this stuff, as somebody who's a student of Saul Alinsky and Cloward Piven, in order to use this to destroy the American experiment. And they see it as a weakness, and they exploit it. Barack Obama, my son would be Trayvon Martin. Remember that? Could you ever imagine, could you ever imagine a commentary like that from the president? But that's what happened. And then everything became a race issue. As soon as Barack Obama's approval numbers collapsed and he started failing, everything became this racialized issue, and we've never recovered from it. Remember Michael Brown, the sociopath in St. Louis, who charged and attacked a cop and got shot for his trouble, justifiably? You can see it here, yeah. It's the absolute collapse. Look at that, 2023, just collapse, and it got cut in half. Race relation, the positivity between race relations got cut in half there in 2023. Who was president then? What exactly was happening? Oh yeah, Barack Obama was failing. He was entering a lame duck second term, and he decided to racialize everything, and that's stuck with the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party is going to drive that home. That's where open borders comes from. That's where these shootings come from. Ladies and gentlemen, we're getting a little deep here, but it's important to understand where this all started. So when you hear CNN be like, hey, that black guy committing a terrorism, killing a bunch of people, he's white, actually. They're doing it for a reason. This is the reason. They're doing it for a reason. It's a strategy behind it. To sow absolute division in this nation and to undercut. The only thing that can possibly make this country function, right, is you have to have a high trust society. You have so many disparate racial groups and people from all over the place. You have to have something that binds people together. And if you can rip people apart in the most visceral and pragmatic of ways, in the most obvious and stunning of ways like this, stoking the racial tensions in America, then you can really destroy the country. They come damn close. And that's why we need to set it right and quickly. Shane Tamura, what is the purpose of this shooting? Shane Tamura is the shooter. That's his name. We have his ID. He was found with a note blaming the NFL for giving him CTE, but he never played in the NFL. He did play football, however. So is he just some crackpot? Is he some crazy person? Let's read. Crazed gunman who killed a New York City police officer and 3 other people in Midtown Skyscraper on Monday evening was carrying a note in his pocket that expressed grievances with the NFL and claimed he suffered CTE. That would be a brain injury linked to head trauma, sources told the Post. Shane Tamura, he's 27. He cited the NFL in his writings, which were found after he was fatally shot. He shot himself in the chest on the 33rd floor of 345 Park Avenue, a swanky skyscraper that houses the National Football League's corporate headquarters. The mentally ill shooter wanted to shoot up the NFL's offices on levels 5 through 8, but he mistakenly went up the wrong elevator. Banks ended up on a higher floor, the mayor has confirmed. In his 3-page-long ramblings, Tamura blamed football for his apparent struggle and neurodegenerative disease, chronic trauma, and he pleaded for his brain to be studied in the wake of the massacre. law enforcement sources said. He also specifically referred to Terry Long, a former Pittsburgh Steelers player who was diagnosed with CTE after drowning antifreeze to kill himself 20 years ago. Terry Long, football gave me CTE and it caused me to drink a gallon of antifreeze, the note stated. This guy's like somewhat coherent. You can't go against the NFL. They'll squash you. Please study brain CTE. I'm sorry. The league knowingly concealed the dangers of our brains to maximize profits. They failed us. The NFL has offices, again, in this skyscraper. One of its employees are among those shot, though not fatally. So this is very peculiar. Mayor Adams confirmed tomorrow's note alluded to having CTE and playing in the NFL. But there's no record of him ever playing in the NFL. There is a record of him playing football, however. It appears, though, he was going after employees of the NFL. We're still going through the suicide note, the exact reason. But at the time, it appears that something attached to his belief he experienced CTE in the NFL. The NFL has offices, again, in this building. Shortly after the shooting, NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch directly called executives at Blackstone, another notable tenant in the skyscraper, to inform them that they weren't the intended targets. Although one of their executives has been killed here. You can see here this photo of them barricading the door. Quite shocking photo and horrifying. He also shot a fifth victim in the lobby of the building after the attack. Surviving victim appears to be an NFL employee. The league's commissioner, Roger Goodell, told staffers in a letter that one of their own had been seriously injured in the shooting. Tamura, who worked as a security guard at a Las Vegas casino, never professionally played football despite referencing CTE. He played high school football in California. He was described as a good and standout player. It looked like the sky was the limit, then it wasn't anymore, said a classmate. Tamura graduated from Golden Valley High. This is in California in 2016, ahead of his senior year. He told the Los Angeles Times that he expected big things to be a running back and other star players on the team. Again, here's an interview of Tamura when he was a younger man in 2016, approximately 9 years ago. Tamura is talking about a successful high school football game. Have a listen.
We're here with standout running back Shane Tamura from the Granada Hills football team. Big 35-31 victory against Kennedy tonight. The battle for Granada Hills. Shane, just talk about you guys getting that win tonight. How'd you guys come through?
We definitely had to stay disciplined. We were down 10-0. We definitely had to stay disciplined. Our coach kept saying, don't hold your heads down, don't hold your heads down. We just had to stay disciplined and come together as a team.
Shane,
So there you go. I mean, you can, this is clearly somebody who has some type of brain malfunction and snapped. His brain snapped. He said he was an NFL player. Do we know more about the actual letter? Let's listen to the mayor who's described the suicide note in an interview this morning. Here we go.
Tell us about the apparent suicide note that was in the shooter's pocket.
He alluded to having CTE from playing in the NFL. He never played in the NFL. And he alluded to the CTE being the reason for his illness. It appears as though he was going after the employees at the NFL. The building 345 housed the NFL's company there as well. But we're still going through the suicide note to zero in on the exact reason, but at this time it appears as though something that is attached to his belief he experienced CTE from playing in the NFL.
And so
there are crazy people everywhere, man. You need to have good guys with guns. There was a security guard in the building, but I guess there needs to be more severe and swifter action, especially if you're in these positions. You have to stay forever vigilant. Mayor Adams confirmed that Shane Tamura went up the wrong elevator, that he was intending to go to the NFL headquarters and kill people. That was the goal here. Here we go.
And so it appears that this is an individual who drove all the way across the country from Las Vegas, believing he was suffering from this brain disorder known as CTE. He goes to this building where the NFL headquarters are located in some kind of revenge situation. He gets inside. He ends up on the 33rd floor. We know that the NFL offices are on a lower floor. Does it appear he got lost in the building? Was he trying to get there? Did he just go the wrong way? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, great question. There are two different elevator banks, and as you know, anyone that's in many of our corporate buildings, some banks don't go to every floor. He appeared to have gone to the wrong bank, and he ended up on the floor of Rooted Management. And you see on the videos that he discharged the weapon several times.
Well, this follows another sociopath who did a mass stabbing in Traverse City, Michigan. Not trying to connect what seems to be disconnected things, with the exception of, listen, in Traverse City, Michigan, some man who thought he was Jesus Christ, who lived inside of an insane hallucinogenic state. I played in the NFL. The NFL gave me CTE. The NFL is the source of all my problems. Bro, you never even played college football. But whatever, people live in these delusions. One, it's important to not affirm those delusions. It's you can't have a functional society without people living in reality. But then on top of that, it's very important to stay vigilant. What stopped more people from potentially dying, and you know who's in Walmart. There are children, there are old people in Walmart. In Traverse City, there was a hero with a firearm who held the mass stabber at bay. His name was Derek Perry. He was a former Marine. And that hero with a firearm prevented what could have been many, many more deaths. That follows a sociopath who also lived in some type of psychotic delusion that the Christian church was persecuting him. He went and shot up a church in Michigan, Flint, Michigan. This individual was trying to attack a vacation Bible school at a church in Flint, Michigan. He got run over by a deacon in his truck, and then he was sent to his maker. He was going to go, you thought the church was persecuting you. Wait, he was sent straight to Jesus for judgment by the security guard at the church, who didn't hesitate for a moment to discharge and use his weapon in the service of protecting the children inside of the church. Here we go. Michigan deacon thwarted a attack on church by ramming his truck into the shooter. And then the Christian security guard discharged his firearm, ensuring that the threat to all of the Christian children was neutralized. You just got to stay vigilant. You have to use equal and opposite force or greater force. That's why the Second Amendment was written. Guns have been around for a very long time. Guns have been around for 500 years. Not new technology. And you have to make sure that if a bad guy has a gun, that a good guy has a gun and is able to use it in order to protect innocents. And so, unfortunately, in New York, this is a circumstance where no one was able to put down the shooter swiftly enough. But I guess the through point between all of these is that mental illness is real. Many, and I would agree with this from a spiritual perspective, would call it demonic possession. The nature of Satan is described pretty plainly in the Bible. Steal, kill, destroy. Steal, kill, destroy. Christ describes the nature of Satan to steal, kill, destroy. That's what's happening in all of these instances, destroying the lives of these little children, stealing the lives of people, literally physically killing them. You could argue that it's a spiritual battle, in fact, that we're fighting, but nonetheless, put down evil, make no peace with evil. And so stay forever vigilant, ladies and gentlemen. President Trump's statement on all of this. From Truth Social, I have been briefed on the tragic shooting that took place in Manhattan, a place that I know and that I love, and I trust all law enforcement agencies to get to the bottom of this. Crazed lunatic, correct framing there by the president, committed such a senseless act of violence, and my heart is with the families of the 4 people who were killed, including the New York City police officer and the ultimate sacrifice. Bless the New York City Police Department. Bless New York. Quite a different commentary than the commentary from New York's frontrunner for the next mayor. Meet Zoran Mandami, who said, hey, you know what? We need to defund the police. You want to create an incident like this every single weekday in every building in New York? Just take all the cops off the street. There are enough crazy people there. Just go wander the streets or just ride the subway. One stop and you'll see so many loons and sociopaths in New York City. This is how you create this environment. We don't need investigation to know that the New York City Police Department is racist, anti-queer, and a majority threat to public safety. It's amazing, like when you see images like this and the shootings like this, that this is what Zoran Mandami claims is a threat to public safety, is not enough queer police officers. Okay. Zoran Mandami celebrated a police officer crying. I just saw a cop crying in his car. LMAO. Nature is healing, says Zoran Mandami. And Zoran Mandami, much like the shooter yesterday and CNN, wants to target whites. Look at this. Zoran Mandami doubles down on his plan to target white neighborhoods in higher taxes. And for those who are going to clip this segment, go ahead and check his website because he's the one saying it, dumbasses. But yeah, that's what he says. Rich white people are the greatest evil, and we're going to tax more white people. They're the problem in our society. Harmeet Dillon has told our show exclusively that she's not, of course, going to allow this, that this may well be in violation of the law. And we were actually able to ask President Trump about Zoran Mandami, and we're proud of that. Zoran Mandami got the old President Trump saying, we have to arrest him, maybe. Legendary clip. ALX, can you grab that real fast? Anyway, New York City gets, I suppose, what they vote for. A fascinating and wonderful quote from what I believe it to be one of the founding fathers or a great American thinker. I don't know who to attribute it to. That democracy is when the voters get exactly what they want and they get it good and hard. New York, is this what you want? Every single weekday, then elect Zoran Mandami. I mean, listen, you can just look through the guy's old tweets, old posts, and his policies to see that this is what happens. Ladies and gentlemen, Patriot Mobile is our cell phone service of choice whenever we are traveling all around the country, like to Alligator Alcatraz to ask Donald Trump about Zoran Mandami. We just did that 2 weeks ago. Here's the truth. There's only one cell phone company that boldly stands in the gap for Americans and for patriots that believe that freedom is worth fighting for. That is Patriot Mobile. Make the switch today. They're available on all 3 major networks. We wouldn't use them if they weren't. We travel all over the place. We're traveling more this week and next week. Think switching is a hassle? No, baby. Their 100% US-based customer service team will make the switch easy. And more importantly, they are the only Christian conservative wireless provider in America. So please, be wise with how you are aligning your values and how you are spending your money. Go to patriotmobile.com/Benny or call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code Benny to get a free month of service. Switch today. patriotmobile.com/Benny. Call 972-PATRIOT. Very quickly here. H.L. Mencken. There we go. Democracy is a theory that common people know what they want and they deserve to get it good and hard. New York City, please, I beg of you. You are still a great American city. There will never be another New York. You can't just rebuild a New York. Miami will never be New York, okay? I think Miami's a great city. But please, for the love of God, save yourselves and don't vote in the race-hating, cop-hating, defund the police, communist. We're begging you. We're begging you. But you know what? I don't live there for a reason. So you do you. Ladies and gentlemen, very quickly, here's President Trump saying that Zoran Mandami deserves to be in prison. Here we go.
President, Mr. President, your beloved New York City may well be led by a communist soon, Zoran Mandami, who in his nomination speech said he will defy ICE and will not allow ICE to arrest criminal aliens in New York City. Your message to communist Zoran Mandami?
Well, then we'll have to arrest him. Look, We don't need a communist in this country, but if we have one, I'm going to be watching over him very carefully on behalf of the nation. We send him money. We send him all the things that he needs to run a government. And by the way, they get about 3 times what you get, Ron. If you look at the per capita, Florida gets 1/3 of what New York gets in terms of the.
All right, here we go. I'm going to do it. Here we go. Here comes the rap.
Criminal aliens in New York City. Your message to communist Zorhan Mandami.
Well, then we'll have to arrest him. Look, we don't need a communist.
Okay, all right. Well, that made all the headlines. And ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll make headlines with our next guest. One of the smartest people in the entire industry. Somebody who shoots straight and from the hip. Somebody who's been calling out so much of the delinquency, degeneracy, and criminal corruption inside of our institutions for a very, very long time. He has an immaculate record, and he has an immaculate publication. The Federalist is something you should read every single morning. I certainly do. And its co-founder and CEO join us live right now. His name is Sean Davis. Welcome, Sean, to the show. Sean, welcome back to the program. Your takeaway thoughts really quickly on what happened in New York and Cincinnati. It seems like there is a concerted effort to sort of pull America apart at the seams. It's not good. It seems like the media is thirsty to blame President Trump, white people, stoke a new race war. They're like itching for it, aren't they?
Yeah, it's actually really kind of disappointing because I think we know at the root of all crime problems, you have an unsolvable problem, which is the fallen human condition. Doesn't make for a sexy news topic. Doesn't make for really great hot takes or anything like that. Now, obviously, there's things you can do to reduce crime. You can put criminals in prison, for example. Criminals who are in prison cannot commit crimes against people who are not in prison. But it's really frustrating to watch the news, and they're trying to politicize and racialize everything. You know, if it's a white guy with a gun, then obviously guns are the problem and white people are the problem. If it's a black guy with a gun, it's the guns are a problem. If it's a black guy with a gun in New York City, let's be CNN and call him white. And it's just like, can you just give us the facts? Like, we're all adults. We know how to think. We can contextualize things on our own. But no, they have to shove their stupid agendas down our throats all the time. And it's freaking exhausting.
It's exhausting. It's exhausting to watch now the cover that they're running for the Russiagate hoax. And you should stand here very proud as the CEO and co-founder of perhaps the only publication on the internet that got it right. And you have an extensive history of calling this out at the Federalist. You've done some of the original reporting on Russiagate. This is a very proud moment for you, Sean. I've been enjoying your feed lately.
Well, thank you. It's nice to get credit from folks like you. I will say the only thing I actually want, I just want people to go to prison. If no one gives us credit ever again, and the trade-off for that is like Brennan and Comey go to prison, dude, I'm good forever. That's all I care about. Is that the bad people who try to destroy our country over this and who poison the minds of half the country for a generation, if not more, with their lies. The people behind that have to go to prison.
Sean, we're going to be joined by General Flynn in a bit. And you have an article right now, top of the Federalist. Declassified Susan Rice confirms Michael Flynn was personally targeted in Oval Office meeting. This is something that, as you talk about the victims of Russiagate, is like a good example, for instance, of a person that did nothing wrong and had his life destroyed and his children threatened to be thrown in prison. Can you talk us through what happened to General Flynn and what you've uncovered?
Yeah, they did destroy Michael Flynn's life. So what happens is Trump wins in 2016. He says that Michael Flynn, a decorated combat veteran, is going to be his national security advisor. And shortly after the election, about a month, Democrats in government just decided, yeah, we're really not going to let this guy take power peacefully. We are going to try and make sure he doesn't get inaugurated. We're going to try and destroy the lives of his staff. We're going to cripple his presidency. We're maybe even going to try and put him in prison. And the first person they targeted in this effort after Trump was Michael Flynn. And it was because of his position as national security advisor. They knew Susan Rice and Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Jim Comey and John Brennan and James Clapper. They knew that Michael Flynn, as the NSA, was going to be the one who had access to all of the things they were doing. They knew that he was going to see everything and that he was going to share it with Trump. And so what they did is they initially tried to run an op against him, only to find out on January 4th, 2017, 16 days before Trump was inaugurated, that the agents who they had tasked with looking into Flynn had actually exonerated him, said he did nothing wrong. He was operating completely by the book. There's nothing wrong with speaking to foreign representatives when you're the incoming member of an administration. And so on January 5th in the Oval Office, and we know partly about this because of a memo that Susan Rice wrote, they all decided that they were going to target Flynn, that they were going to prevent him from getting information he needed to serve the president and the American people, and that if necessary, they were going to destroy his life. And that plan was hatched in the Oval Office by Barack Obama and Joe Biden and that entire corrupt national security team. And they all need to go to jail. Everyone involved in this has to go to jail, or it's going to happen again and again and again. Yes.
Okay. So this is a great illustrative post, and let's pop it up here, about the ongoing illegal conspiracy. Now, Mike Davis was on our show last week, and he went thermonuclear viral. It's now become the narrative that this is, he posited that because they are continuing to say they didn't do this, and they are continuing to conspire with networks like CNN, and you can see it openly on their network, that Russiagate is real. And even in Barack Obama's statement, Sean, he says, no, Russiagate is real, right? Like, he's continuing the conspiracy. You're saying that they're in severe legal jeopardy for this. Can you unpack that for us?
Absolutely. And by the way, this is a tactic that I learned from the left and the Mueller. So if they don't like it, sorry, these are the rules they created. Like they made this world and now we're going to live in it. They sowed and now we're going to reap. And how it goes is, it wasn't just that they committed crimes by what they did in the Oval Office that day, or the lies they told, or the documents and the evidence they fabricated. What they were actually doing was they were putting together a fraudulent conspiracy against the U.S. government and against the American people. And the thing about an ongoing conspiracy is that each additional act in furtherance of the conspiracy, that counts as a crime, as part of that conspiracy. So it doesn't matter that you may have started the original conspiracy in 2016 or 2017, or maybe even 2020. If you are still undertaking actions, if you are still doing overt things and saying things to obstruct, investigators finding out the truth, you are still acting in furtherance of that conspiracy. And each new overt act, like John Brennan or James Comey or Barack Obama coming out and trying to obstruct the truth on it, each overt act tolls the statute of limitations for when you can charge that conspiracy. So my advice to them is, you guys should keep talking. You should absolutely put out defiant statements every day about how you did nothing wrong and you definitely didn't fabricate evidence and you definitely didn't break the law. Keep doing it, because you're just making it easier for us. But at the end of the day, these people have to go to prison.
I appreciate the repetition of this. I like it. It works. They must go to prison. For what, Sean? You're very knowledgeable on this topic. You have friends at the DOJ. You have Molly Hemingway that works with you every single day, and she does some of the best reporting on this on Earth. And what would we be charging here? What would you advise?
Yeah, I think it's a conspiracy to defraud the United States. And in fact, there's kind of two ways you can look at it. Vis-a-vis Barack Obama. We know, based on a bunch of new documents that we've gotten, that there was a conspiracy from Comey and Brennan to cook the intel community assessment, to put things in there that were not true. And in the process of that, you could argue that they actually defrauded Obama. You could argue that maybe Barack Obama was a victim of their conspiracy, that he asked for information and he was actually lied to and defrauded. If you think maybe it's a bridge too far to go after Obama, okay, treat him as a victim. We know they were cooking the books against the advice and intel of their own experts. And not only did they defraud the American public, they defrauded Obama. But I give Bondi a lot of credit over at the AG's office for setting up what are called these new strike forces to look at this corruption. This is an interagency model that DOJ has used going back decades that was really put to great effect to go after the mob, to go after organized crime and racketeering. And I think that's the model that they're probably looking to use against this mob of corrupt intel officers and intel agents at the very top that were doing everything they could to cook up evidence, fabricate lies, defraud the president and the American people, and rip the country apart.
And you note that some of the subterfuge continued on through Trump term one. For instance, Comey held his position and was able to launch this conspiracy against the president from the inside. You have this spectacularly aged like a fine French wine, Sean, post here from 2020, you calling out Gina Haspel. She was, of course, the CIA director there in Trump term 1. What did she do in furtherance of this conspiracy?
Well, Haspel is a fascinating character that she's largely avoided much scrutiny. I believe she was CIA station chief in London when these rumors that allegedly started the investigation against Trump in mid-2016 started coming through. We're told that it was intel from an Australian ambassador that was passed through the legal attaché at the embassy in London. And of course, we know that an embassy and the CIA, they kind of work hand in glove. So this came through her domain in 2016. It's how it allegedly started. And then we find out again in late 2020, before the election, by the way, that it was Haspel who was personally trying to block the release and declassification of key documents showing the world what actually happened. So a lot of what we got over this last week about the corrupt intel community assessment that just had lie after lie, it was Haspel, we were told back in 2020, who was personally blocking that. It was Haspel who was rooting, we were told, for Trump to lose so that she could evade accountability and continue to obstruct and hide these documents that we so desperately need to see.
So the conspiracy is vast, and you've mentioned a couple of key names, Brennan, Clapper, and Comey, that will, of course, be well known to this audience. Another name that you haven't mentioned, Sean, that you love to take an axe to is the name Clinton, Hillary Clinton. And you burned her in effigy on the show before. And I'm wondering, what does your reporting show about her culpability in all of this?
Oh, poor Hill Dog. So my favorite piece of news from last week that we learned in this declassified evisceration of the intel community assessment. Remember that we were being told that Russia wanted Trump to win. Now, the reality is that was never true. They were fully expecting Hillary to win. They were really just trying to be troublemakers. That's what they do. And we realized that had they actually wanted her to win, they would have dumped a bunch of derogatory information they had on her, that she was mentally unwell, that she was prone to fits of rage, that they had to keep her on tranquilizers so that she could be managed and functional each day. But what's fascinating is it was Hillary Clinton who funded this whole Russia collusion hoax from the beginning. It was the Clinton campaign and the Democrat National Committee who were funding the creation of that garbage Steele dossier. The dossier written by a guy who was, by the way, on the payroll of a sanctioned Russian oligarch, as he wrote it and accused Trump of being a Russian agent. But it was Hillary Clinton's campaign who funded this whole thing. And then when she lost, which no one expected, they decided to weaponize it, feed it into the FBI for good, and then use that to cripple Trump's first term as president.
So we have the reporting about this up right now. It's become quite clear that the Russians actually wanted Hillary to win, and the intelligence community assessment said the exact opposite. Now, Dan Bongino went viral this week by alluding to that's what he is looking into in his classified skiff as part of this strike force. And it's the most viral post on X this week. If Hillary Clinton, and again, Sean, I just went to community college, so I don't know, but I can read the definition of treason. If Hillary Clinton definition of treason is using a foreign adversary in order to usurp the will of the people in your own nation, in order to do damage to your own country, often from the inside. Hillary Clinton is using Russian spies that are on the payroll of Russian oligarchs who are sanctioned in order to sow absolute discord and to kneecap a duly elected president. Sure as hell sounds like treason to me, Sean.
Well, yeah, again, I like using the rules that the left has constructed. So we warn them when they do these things that it'll come back to bite you. We heard ad nauseum for years that Donald Trump himself committed treason when he went on January 6th and gave a speech and said, hey, people protesting and demonstrating, you need to be peaceful, respect the police, we love the police. We were told that was treason. So that's our new bar. Sorry, like I didn't create the rules. I wanted a different set of rules and tried to get them for years. So I didn't create these rules. The left did. And those are the rules now. So either we're going to have two sets of rules where they do whatever we want, and then, we get thrown in jail or accused of treason when we say things like, hey, be peaceful, or we're going to use their own rules against them. So like they made their beds and now they're going to lie in them, as far as I'm concerned.
Man, Julie Kelly was on here saying, please, please, I'm begging you, like, use the seditious conspiracy charges that they brought against Enrique Tarrio, who wasn't even there on January 6th. And they were able to wrap up, I think, 22 convictions during January 6th for seditious conspiracy. First time that's been charged since the Civil War. So why the hell not? You know, really would be fate loves irony moment in order to charge
shoes
Brennan.
On the other foot.
Yeah, that's right. All right, final parting bit here, Sean. What would be your recommendation to these strike forces, given all of the available evidence that you've done reporting on? Would you recommend charges? You would recommend charges for Brennan, Comey, and Clapper. Would you include Hillary in that? What would be sort of your list here? Like, where would you like to see it go from here?
You know, I think the greatest punishment that Hillary will ever face is not prison. It's waking up every day knowing she'll never be president because Donald Trump beat her. So I actually would set her aside because she wasn't in government when all this happened. And I have a distinction between the people who use the powers of the government to destroy lives and then just the randos who were completely janked out on horse tranks like Hillary. Will set her aside. The people who are using our government to hold us hostage, those are the people that have to go to prison, whether it's Peter Strzok or Lisa Page or Andy McCabe or Comey. I think those are who people should focus on. And I think Hillary should just live in a prison of her own mind, knowing she's never, ever going to be president. And that's good for me.
A prison where the bars are box wine Chardonnay and horse tranquilizer.
Horse tranks.
Yeah. Okay. I can see that. I can see it. Maybe we could build that prison on Epstein Island. She'd be right at home. Okay. Everybody follow Sean, obviously. Sean Davis. You most likely already follow him, but he is just the guy who is body checking the fake narratives in this nation with his excellent publication, a must read every single morning, The Federalist. He's got 600,000 subscribers on X, and you must be one of them. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
Godspeed. Cool. All right. Klein busting out the brand new special guest stinger because he actually had to he couldn't find the button, but I like it. This is very nice. It's very slick. Boom. I like that. Ladies and gentlemen, very, very slick. Very, very digital eco-friendly. Something that is very sharp in your back pocket is our programming. And Killer Klein showing us the brand new stinger. I loved seeing it. Nice move, Killer Klein. You could also have something very sharp and savvy in your back pocket. Allio Capital. They were actually at the Turning Point conference. I was able to meet with them and chill with these guys. They're freaking sweet dudes who just like want to unleash the optimization of the American economy that is rip-roaring right now. President Trump has us on the rocket ship. But you got to make sure that your money is making money. It's not good enough to just bury it in the backyard in a tin can like your grandpappy did. Although that's freaking cool, you know? Who doesn't want like an old coffee can full of ones and silver dollars, okay? I'm down with that. But the point is that if you wish to have your dollars make dollars, you got to have something like the Allio Capital app. It's what I use. I've personally invested with it. And it's an investment app that fluctuates your investment and navigates it using an AI that tracks massive global events, currency shifts, news cycles, inflationary, macro and micro economic factors. It's fantastic. And it just is nimble. And AI is replacing so much in the fintech environment. And I've got to tell you, Allio has got it unlocked. Download the app today. The App Store, Google Play. Text my name, Benny, to 511-511. Allio Capital, A-L-L-I-O. Text Benny to 511-511. Download the Allio app today. Past performance does not guarantee results. Consult with your financial professionals before making an investment decision. See terms and conditions at alliocapital.com. All right, ladies and gentlemen, on and back by popular demand, the great General Michael Flynn, right now. The hunted have become the hunters, General. This is a post up on your Substack here. I want to just simply give you the floor. We had Sean Davis of the Federalist explaining his new article about you being targeted by Susan Rice, and so many of these emails are now showing that Obama was obsessed with you, General, and his entire team was needing to take you out as enemy number one. Seems like this is the purpose of this article. A righteous moment for you, sir. The floor is yours.
Yeah, incredible. I think the quote of the day goes to Sean on, I wrote it down. I think he said, "Djangoed on horse tranks." I mean, that might be the quote of the month. Talking about Hillary Clinton, "Djangoed on horse tranks." Unbelievable, huh? What we've learned, and in that exposure, just a touch on that point, because I think that Sean was righteous and fair in the last segment. They are talking about the direction that a legal, a DOJ strike force should go after those that were serving in government, where he's not giving her a pass because the two courts that exist, the court of public opinion and then the court of law. But Hillary, they knew, obviously, from the exposure of this information, this is the adversaries have a file on all of us, and clearly on Hillary. They knew exactly what was going on, and everybody here in America was speculating, but actually the Russians, the Chinese, all of our adversaries, even countries in Europe, all knew about her health status. And they would take advantage of it, never mind all the other kinds of nefarious things that Hillary Clinton was involved in. So, but today I posted on X, and people can go to @JenFlynn and read it. The hunters, or the hunted have become the hunters. What this really comes down to is what we are seeing, and I won't go into the who should be prosecuted, how it's going to be prosecuted, all the stuff that the DOJ and from Pam, Cash, Dan, and others, the White House counsel and others are going to be working on. But what we are beginning to see is we're seeing a very, very evil, dark underbelly of the American establishment, political establishment, and it took a turn for the worse. Really, probably going back 30 years, maybe 50 years, maybe 70, depending on the historians that are actually following what has been happening to the United States of America, and those that really, really look at the backside of what we are beginning to see. But let's just take it back to the days of Barack Obama, where when he did talk about the fundamental transformation of America. I mean, this is a very serious thing that he wanted to do, and I've said this on your show before. The plan, and I've written about this. In fact, I still think it's my pinned post is the overall strategic deep state plan was 8 years of Obama, 8 years of Hillary, and the Benny Johnson show, God forbid, would not be around. Right. And people like me, wouldn't be around either. So in there, I talk about in today's Substack, I talk about how things have turned around dramatically. And I think one of the things that Sean did highlight, and I think it's smart, and I think and other smart legal analysts have talked about this, is to use and leverage what the left has done to Donald J. Trump in order to take advantage going forward of who does need to be held to account. And there are going to have to be people held to account. One of the things that I know for a fact, that because I spoke to Trump about this early on in the 2016, post the election of 2016, and early on at that time, and then into 2017, we talked about the spying, the ongoing spying, the speculation, right? I mean, these people are spying on us, right? We also talked about the things that we didn't know. I mean, I knew a lot about the government at the time, particularly about the intel community. That's why they went after me so hard. That's very clear. I mean, and now people ask me, why aren't I in the government? Well, maybe, I'm not in the government, but I can tell you, Benny, and for your audience, trust me, that I am far more effective on the outside right now because of all the things that people are beginning to see. So guiding, cajoling, counseling, influencing, advising on some of these things that we are beginning to see, they don't come just because, somebody sprinkled fairy dust and poof, they exist. Because I can tell you, those that are inside of the intel community, particularly the intelligence community, and some over at the State Department, but they are fighting tooth and nail to keep this stuff hidden still to this day, because in 6 months' time, with President Donald J. Trump 2.0, not just 47, but 2.0, and that's part of what my message is in this article today, is that this is a renewed, refreshed Donald J. Trump. This is not Donald J. Trump 45. This is Donald J. Trump 47. And he knows that when he starts to think about what happened in his first administration and what happened during those 4 years in between, and then now where he's at 6 months into it, he knows that his legacy will be sort of judged historically based on a couple of things. One is to give the United States of America something, and essentially that something is sufficient time to overcome this burden of corruption that we are all experiencing and is being exposed. He's going to have to take some dramatic steps, and he's going to have to drive some of what the Department of Justice is going to have to do. Whereas when he was the President 45 1.0, you would, if you go back and you look at a lot of things, because I paid very close attention because I was in the middle of being persecuted during that time. Trump would say, we'll see what happens. If I could shut the Mueller, I could shut the Mueller investigation down, whenever I want to, but I won't. I'm gonna let this thing play out. Now Trump is in a much different and a much, much stronger position. So his stance, like the stance of a really solid lineman on the Super Bowl team, is much stronger than it was during his 45th presidency. And that's because, go ahead, Benny.
Oh, no, please finish your thought. That's because of what?
Well, that's because Trump, during that time, he really did not know the ways of Washington, D.C. And I don't think he realized then, I really don't, that he was not only the commander-in-chief and the president of the United States, he's also the chief law enforcement officer of the United States of America, not the attorney general. Yes. President Trump is. And that's what he has learned. And I'm witnessing that in many of the things that he's saying publicly, and what he's doing he's doing a superb job being very transparent. And I think we're going to see even a greater level of transparency. That knowledge of Donald J. Trump as the chief law enforcement officer for the United States of America is much stronger. And I can tell that just in some of the things that he is doing, never mind what I think that he really learned that lesson during Trump 1.0. And that's a powerful, powerful place for him to be, a place that he never thought that he would be. And many on the left, in fact, the entire left was trying to not allow him to come back into the political fray, which he did. All those 4 years while he was being persecuted, they went down to Mar-a-Lago with orders to shoot to kill if necessary. So, Trump has learned a lot, and we America are in a much stronger position right now because of that.
You say, General, that President Trump was ill-informed and ill-advised and didn't understand his complete role constitutionally in his first term. But that's because you weren't there, General. That's because they sabotaged you by his side, and you were his top advisor. We have now the proof. We've said it on the show before, but of course now we have it in writing. It's a lot worse. The declassified email shows that Susan Rice noted, and here is the document itself on screen, to Obama and Comey agreeing to hide the Russia hoax investigation from Flynn. It's a conspiracy. It was a conspiracy as much against Trump as it was against the people who were supporting him. You, General, they viewed you as enemy number one. Why did they view you as enemy number one? And one other little, I think, important thing that blew us away last week as we were digging into this is that Donald Trump gets the president's daily brief too when he's the president-elect. And so you were getting those briefs with Donald Trump. They pulled the brief that would have completely blown away any hoax there on December 9th. They stopped that brief because Trump would have gotten it too. It wasn't just Obama getting briefed. It was you too. You would have gotten the information that there was no Russia hoax. They pulled it away from you, which is, I think, Astonishing, General.
It is astonishing. And, to take kind of a little bit of a timeline, walking down memory lane here for people, for your audience. Remember, Obama and Trump met, and Obama tells Trump, don't hire Flynn, right? In addition to, saying, be careful of Kim Jong-un, the North Korean dictator, right? So he tells him that. Then immediately after, and Trump and I talked about that conversation and had a good laugh about it. And then Trump hires me as a national security advisor. Once I was hired as a national security advisor, it didn't require Senate confirmation. It's a direct appointment. Then all of a sudden they now know that. So he goes against what the previous president's advice was. Then we see the 8 December meeting in the Oval Office, which is really important. So this is a really critical piece of evidence that I was not aware of, Benny, and now we've learned about this in this exposure of more evidence. That 8 December meeting is where they talked about we can't have this intelligence going into the PDB. So the PDB was pulled that day. First time, I think. I mean, I've been in the intel community and I've gotten the PDB many times over my career. And as the DIA director, I got it on a daily basis. As a national security advisor, I was getting it every day. That when I look back, that was pulled that day on the 9th of December. And then you see a bunch of different events occur. The next major event, and that gets back to this newly released evidence from Susan Rice, what you just showed, is another one where on the 5th of January, and I've known about this because this did come out in my case where, which was eventually dismissed. On the 5th of January in the Oval Office again, this is why I think that there was the conspiracy component of this was once Trump won, they had this meeting on the 8th of December, and then they had a follow-up meeting on the 5th of January in 2017. And on the 5th of January is when they really cemented the conspiracy. This is when they said, okay, we now have to get Flynn out of the way because Trump didn't do what I asked him to do, thank God. And in order to get Trump out of the way, we've got to get Flynn out of the way. So that was another component of the conspiracy, and that's hard evidence right there. We now have even more from Susan Rice, more exposing of her emails. Then on the day of the inauguration, Susan Rice puts out the very famous email, do everything by the book. Lisa Monaco's name, which is another name, I don't think Sean brought that up in the last segment. Lisa Monaco was the deputy to Susan Rice on the national security staff during Obama. She was actually the Homeland Security advisor and deputy to Susan Rice. I met with Susan Rice and Lisa Monaco multiple times during the transition in 2016. They sat right across the desk like I'm speaking to you right now, only physically in a room. I met with them multiple times. Lisa Monaco eventually became the deputy attorney general under the Biden administration. She kept this thing going, with the likes of Garland, who didn't know what he was doing. So now we have the 5th of January, 2017, to take us back to memory lane. And then the famous email from Susan Rice on the day of the inauguration for Trump. And then between that time, 5 January, and I think it was either 20 or 21 January, 2017, the very famous David Ignatius article from the Washington Post comes out, which was a leak. We call it the kill shot. We have evidence where Jim Clapper, actually, after a meeting between me and Susan Rice, Jim Clapper then calls up David Ignatius and says, okay, take the kill shot, right? Which means now we're going to leverage the media to get the media, message out there. Because remember, alternative media didn't exist at that time, so we couldn't fight back, right? So now the Washington Post puts out this information about Flynn violated the Logan Act, right? And that came out of Biden's mouth during the 5 January timeframe, right? The meeting. So this sort of walk down memory lane, and trust me, on the strike force, because they know this. I mean, I'm don't worry about what I'm doing, folks. Worry about what the people that are in the midst of this conspiracy, they need to worry about lawyering up. But that is when David Ignatius put out the very famous article. We have 9 sources in the intelligence community that said this is what Flynn talked about with the Russian ambassador. And then they started working on the vice president of the United States office. Okay. And that's Pence. And I write about this in my book, Pardon of Innocence. I also talk about it in my film, Flynn, Delivering the Truth, Whatever the Cost. So that article comes out. then there's just this firestorm of media, right, that comes out for that whole period of time, and extraordinary amounts of pressure. And then a little bit further on into the administration, so around the 11th or 12th of February, which was just days before I end up resigning, Andy McCabe, right, Andrew McCabe, Deputy Director of the FBI, and Sally Yates, Acting Attorney General for the United States, Mary McCord, who are some other names involved in this. Mary McCord, who's the head of the National Security Division for the Department of Justice. They then go over to the White House and they met with Reince Priebus and Vice President Pence. And I've said this very publicly, and I've said it in both the movie and the book. You know, I read about this in detail. I won't go into the details of it, but just to say that from that meeting, I got a call right after that meeting and said, hey, I just looked at a document that said you talked about sanctions. And to this day, I've never talked about sanctions, never spoke about sanctions with the Russian ambassador. The transcripts of that conversation are in fact public. We talked about expulsions and we talked about staying out of war. I mean, because the one thing that people have lost sight of is that this conspiracy to undermine a duly elected president could have brought us to World War III. That's how dangerous this thing was. And they didn't care. What they cared about was undermining President-elect Donald J. Trump and then President Donald J. Trump. Because once I resigned, there was nobody around his inner circle that really understood all of the things that I understand about not only the intelligence community, but, you know, our Defense Department, our State Department, and how all of it comes together. That's why I was brought in to be the national security advisor. The last thing I'd say, Benny, on this point, on the sort of walk down memory lane, a couple of months later, so I'm out of there. Now we've got Jeff Sessions is out, right? He had to recuse himself, and then he was out. You got Rod Rosenstein, who's now the acting attorney general. And then there was conversations about March, April timeframe about the 25th Amendment, enacting the 25th Amendment. I mean, these people so desperately wanted Donald Trump out of office. They didn't want him to win in 2016, and they wanted him out. They used multiple times to try to get him to say, screw this, I'm done with this Washington, D.C. garbage. And then they brought in the 25th Amendment. And everybody needs to be reminded about the 25th Amendment issue, which was to get some number of his own cabinet to say, yeah, he's not capable of being the commander in chief and being the president of the United States. That was in the springtime. Once they realized that didn't work, in enters Mueller, right? In enters the Mueller investigation. And once the Mueller investigation began, this is where I don't think Donald Trump understood clearly at that time his role as the chief law enforcement officer of the United States of America. Because I feel, and I've had conversations about it, but I felt at that time, looking back, that he believed that, well, Mueller's going to come in, he's going to find out that this is all a big, bunch of BS, a big hoax, and it's going to go away. Oh, no. And Donald Trump was told after I resigned, and I know this, he was told after I resigned because he thought, well, maybe this Russia thing will go away now that Flynn's out of here, because that's what people around him were telling him. And I know who those people are, and I've written about some of this in my book. When he was told that, when they had that conversation, one person in the room said, oh, no, this is just the beginning. Now that Flynn's out of here, we're in big trouble here. And that's exactly what happened. And here we are. That was early 2017. Okay. Now we are in mid 2025, and the coup d'etat against the United States of America, against a duly elected president again, is still underway. And the deep state has not been brought to heel yet. It will only be brought to heel when serious senior people are held to account. And as we've seen in the last 24 hours, we see, like my friend Rush Limbaugh used to say, Peter Strzok struck stroke. He used to joke about the guy's name. Peter Strzok has deleted all of his posts from X, right? And I even found out early this morning that even the Wayback Machine has been deleted. Well, Peter, too bad, because we have the most important text text messages that you sent to your lover and lawyer of the FBI, Lisa Page. We have the most important ones. And the most important one is, if he wins, we have an insurance policy, right? If he wins, we have an insurance policy. Well, guess what, Benny and your audience? The insurance policy is what we are now seeing in black and white. And to me, this is so egregious. I'm not a lawyer. I should have an honorary law degree with all the crap that I've been through. But I'm just telling you that I know that there are people that are looking hard at this right now. And again, and I'll finish with this, there are two courts. There's a court of public opinion, which is going to destroy these people, and rightly so. And then there's a court of law. And that's where the real, the rubber is going to meet the road. The court of public opinion, in my estimate, is most important right now, because we have to retain the power that the GOP has in our government right now as we go into 2026. Right? I'm not worried about 2028 yet. I'm worried about 2026, and I want, because I'm gonna go on my own political tear here between now and that election, because that election is going to be another bellwether. And frankly, those midterm elections, the turnouts are low. And this coup is not over. And the people that are going to have to fight against those that need to be held accountable, there's going to be a give and take here. And it has to be, because we have to follow a fair rule of law, and we have to have a justice system. But we don't need to go and dig up more evidence, right? We don't need to go dig up more evidence. Yeah, there's the Trump's not going to become president, right? That's Lisa Page, the number 2 lawyer at the FBI, by the way, not just his pillow partner. And he says, no, he's not. We'll stop it. And then he goes into, we have an insurance policy. So, I mean, we have all this stuff. I mean, most of it was published in my case, which eventually was dismissed. So anyway, I'll stop there, Benny, because I know you got other great guests coming on and your audience.
I just wanted to, again, this information is fascinating and rightly posited. We've put up all of the evidence on screen as the general is talking through it. Now, that is the past. The past is prologue to something new that's about to happen. And you just posted about it. And I can't wrap this interview, General, without getting to this, the John Solomon reporting that you have promoted this morning, saying something big is about to happen. We think we've seen the full rodeo. You haven't seen anything yet. You said more accountability is coming soon. John Solomon reporting that there are going to be some massive bombshells declassified in the next 48 hours by the CIA director. They'll have to do with Crossfire Hurricane and Hillary Clinton. Please, General, in closing here, can you frame this for us? What are we about to see?
Yeah, so two things, and there's still a lot of internal undermining within the CIA that has to end. The exposure, though, that I think we're about to see is additional exposure of the current evidence that we are seeing with the undermining in the 2016-2017 timeframe. And I think the big one that's going to come out, and I think it's going to be even worse, is 2020. So 2020 was the coup, as I've said very bluntly. The plan initially was Obama, Hillary, but that got stopped by Trump, right, and the American people. And so then they had to figure out how to do it again. And the real coup was 2020. And I think that, I wouldn't expect something in the next 24 hours, because I think that there's some machinations going on inside of the government right now. But I think a lot of what we're going to learn in leading up to 2020 is the coup. And remember, President Trump was the president at that time, right? The 51 it's intel and defense advisors that signed the Hunter Biden letter. I mean, that's public now. There's a lot of other things that are not public that led up to 2020 that led to the coup and the rigged election where Uncle Joe became the president of the United States. And God, look at what we're learning about the auto pen, right? So more to come. That's where I think, if you want to put a finger on what's next, it's that.
Wow. So that would be, President Trump wasn't necessarily in power. He was the president-elect. But you're talking about the 2020 election where it's sedition against the actual elected president in office.
Exactly.
That's
I mean,
bombshell, General.
It really is. I mean, to me, that's you know, everything that happened to me and to Trump and to the country, we're now seeing that. Now it's how they then decided, once they couldn't get him to get out 25th Amendment or whatever, or just to say, screw it, you Pence, you can have it. When they couldn't do that, they had to figure out another way to do it. And the 2020 election is going to be, I think, the real revelation that we as the world and then certainly the American people are going to see. And to me, that is going to then allow President Trump to make some decisions about how our elections will be conducted. That's the real story here.
Fascinating. So they're going to use this then as a predicate. He's already signed the executive order to secure the elections. They're going to use this as an example of how subterfuge can happen from inside of the system to rig elections against presidents.
Absolutely. And that's not just here in the United States of America. That's worldwide.
General, that's bombshell stuff. Thank you for framing that up for us. We will be on the lookout. Obviously, you should be on the lookout. Here's General Flynn's book, an absolute must-read right now if you want to understand what's happening in your country. It's called Pardon of Innocence. You can get it right here on Amazon, and it has a nearly 5-star rating that you barely ever find on Amazon. #1 bestseller. General Flynn on social media. He's followed by millions. You should be one of them, obviously, here at General Mike Flynn on X. And his Substack, we've already put up the article today. Thank you, General, so much for your time.
Thanks, Benny. God bless.
Godspeed. Keep fresh. All right. Rocking and rolling, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing keeps us rocking and rolling more than our blackout coffee, rip-roaring through our veins every morning. I already showed it to you, but you know what? Why not? It is truly what keeps us going. I got 4 little kiddos at home. They're up all hours of the evening. We got what you would consider a newborn, right? 6 months old, and learning how to sleep, right? Sleep training. It's just the way that it goes. And so our blackout coffee, I think this is the last of the pot, actually. I get it going first thing in the morning, get my workout, and get rocking. Ladies and gentlemen, blackout coffee is good for you. The reason why is because, well, they support Americans, American workers, American coffee, not the communist stuff that comes from Seattle. Ladies and gentlemen, small batch is premium. It's made right here in America, right here in the fine state of Florida. They employ only Americans. They got an awesome company that supports your values. So support them every single morning when you pour that cup of coffee in your cup, no matter how you like your coffee. Blackout coffee is for you if you're a hardworking American who loves American values and coffee that actually tastes like coffee. Go to blackoutcoffee.com/Benny. Use the code Benny for 20% off your first order. Support the American dream and drink Blackout. That's blackoutcoffee.com/Benny. Stop settling and start drinking real coffee. Ladies and gentlemen, somebody who's been awake, not woke, but awake, especially when it comes to the financial markets, the threats from China, and what the world is remaking, a world remade by Trump tariffs, an economy on the tear. What happens next? Kyle Bass, the CIO of Heyman Capital Management, joins us live now. Kyle, what's up, man? How you doing?
Great to see you, Benny.
All right. General Flynn, you just got the man is such a repository of information. I appreciate your patience here. He's just, he lets you have it with both barrels when you ask him for information, and he just cooks.
I mean, as you know, a career civil servant, someone who led our military, and then was ostracized by a political campaign that actually drained his life savings. I mean, it's amazing that we allow that to happen to civil servants. Litigation is expensive. DOJ investigations, you know what they cost. He spent it all, and I feel sorry for General Flynn, but I mean, he's writing the book. He's doing what he's supposed to do. He's telling the truth. Hopefully, he's going to be able to rebuild his retirement savings.
You've been telling the truth about the threat from China, and also telling the truth about the Trump economy, tariffs, and some of the trade deals. You're obviously a major fan of the economic factors at play right now, and you've been trolling this post from the Democrats on inflation. I want to start with some of the top line news here. The EU agreement and get your take on this, Kyle. That seemed to have, it seems like Trump is remaking the world actually right now, and the world has bent the knee. Is that a correct assessment?
Yeah, I think that if you look at each country's trade deal has idiosyncrasies, as we know. We're trying to paint things with a broad brush. There are some details to be worked out, but in general, he's doing things that would take other presidents or administrations, maybe more than an administration long, to pull off. And he's handling it, in my opinion, properly. Some would say recklessly, but how are you ever going to make change unless you do it broadly and forcefully? Many of these non-trade or non-tariff barriers and tariffs against U.S. goods have kind of boiled that frog over time, and we've done nothing about it. And what Trump's trying to do is simply reset the world. And when you look at the United States as the largest consumer in the world, we run the largest trade deficit of any country in the world, and a giant chunk of that deficit goes to China, and a giant chunk of it goes to Europe and some of the other allies that we've got. So this resetting is really important, Benny, and it's reciprocal and fair to a certain extent. Again, we're not going to get the trade deficit down to zero, but we certainly are going to move it by some like $300 billion. So maybe it goes from $1.2 trillion to $900 billion. Maybe it drops a little more. But I think what Trump's doing is going to create that external revenue account that, as you see, is already generating significant internal revenues in the U.S. And you haven't seen what the naysayers were saying. You've not seen concomitant inflation associated specifically with the tariffs. You just haven't seen it. It's not there.
Jim Cramer down bad, Kyle. More people should listen to your account on X instead of maybe listen to inverse Jim Cramer if you want to know what's actually going to happen.
I mean,
there's a lot of screaming from the rooftop.
It's in the numbers. And look, Jim Cramer has the ear. You think about each constituency of each person. You have the freedom to, I think, talk your mind, whether you're right or wrong. You are known for speaking your mind, and Jim Cramer has the ears of all of corporate CEOs, both domestic and foreign. And so when you see tariffs levied, CEOs say, "Oh my God, look at my margins. Look at what's going to happen to our system." Or, I haven't changed my procurement. I still have Chinese inputs, or I still deal with the EU regularly. So I think when you think about his constituency, it's primarily corporate CEOs and then investors in America that don't want to lose money. So, unfortunately, what President Trump's doing, or fortunately, he's pressing a button that's a hard button. There is no easy button, right? But we must do two things. We must reset our trade relationships in the world, which he's doing, and then we have to tackle our fiscal deficit, which we're trying to do with both DOGE and the tariffs from external revenue. We'll see where we get on this, but basically, pre-COVID, we were running $900 billion a year deficits. Post-COVID, we're now running $1.8 to $2 trillion deficits. So basically a $1 trillion difference between pre-COVID, post-COVID, and spending.
I mean, it's a good start, I suppose, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we have to start somewhere. External revenue, I think, could approach $300 billion from tariffs. If you look at the amount of goods and services the U.S. imports from the world, and you just do some simple math. And I think DOGE will be fairly successful if we can get through some of the legal red tape. I think DOGE can be successful.
We have this fascinating article from Politico yesterday that was explaining that the world is just bending the knee to Donald Trump. Donald Trump keeps asking for everything. America gets everything. Our producers are sourcing it right now. There's amazing framing. America keeps getting everything they want, and the world is giving it to us. And they frame it as almost a bad thing, which is insane. But wouldn't this be considered a good thing, actually, for us? Oh, it's an Axios article. Okay, well, we're grabbing it right now. The headlining was just pitch perfect. Obviously something that every American, you would assume, would be celebrating. Why does the media not like the way that Trump's doing these trade deals?
I mean, the EU hates it. If you think about the EU is essentially the retirement community for the world. I'm in Paris a lot. I'm in Europe a lot, unfortunately, due to my wife's job. But when you move around and you see that in 20 years, the EU 27 has grown less than 20%. In 20 years, the US has grown 93% in our GDP. So, Benny, think about that for a second. Europe's growing at less than 1% a year. It's basically stagnating. And they've imposed, when you look at Italy, which Meloni's doing a great job in Italy, but if you look at France, 60% of their GDP is government spending. It's a full socialist economy already. So how does France exist? Well, you get wealthy Arabs there. You have African kleptocrats. You have wealthy people from the US and wealthy people from Europe, and that's where they go to spend money. But it's not something that grows. So when I think about our deal with the EU has massive taxes on US automobiles, in some cases 100% tariffs on US autos. We've allowed that frog to boil over time. What we're trying to do is simply have a great reset. Europe's not taking a knee to Trump. They don't like Trump, as you know. UVL and the people that run Europe, whether you're at the ECB level or EU Parliament level, there aren't many fans of Trump. However, it's hard to fight the numbers, Benny. The numbers don't lie. The bond markets don't lie. The stock markets don't lie. The numbers don't lie. And what we're doing is creating, if you really look at the deals that we have with Japan and Europe and what we're doing domestically here, we are trying to, and I think we're going to succeed in kind of a digital industrial revolution. We are going to have it here. And the manufacturing base of the world is going to shift. The balance of power is coming back to the technological advancements of the United States. And President Trump sees that, and he's tackling that all the way through. The one problem I have with his plan, Benny, is the hostage exchanges that we're engaging in with the NVIDIA H20 chips for rare earth magnets. I mean, we don't need electric cars that badly. China runs 65% of its economy on coal, right? So if you look at what's going on, China's subsidizing everything they want to subsidize to put some of our businesses out of business, and we are succumbing to hostage exchanges with China, our mortal enemy. So I think that the China deal is something that I wouldn't do.
So you've been such a China hawk, and I do want to frame this correctly, and thank you to my production team. It's Axios, not Politico, both left-wing outlets in Washington, D.C., but this is the tweet here from Axios that I love. In the Trump-dominated global economy, the U.S. gets plenty and gives nothing. You're complaining about this? Are you an American or are you not? Like, this is actually effective. We have, of course, the only game in town, and we are the literal rocket ship of the world's economy. Why would you frame it like this? Fascinating way to color an article.
Again, when you think about the media, we live in a post-truth world. People hate Trump, and they write articles like this that demonize Trump for actually resetting a trade relationship that must be reset. And do you think Europe gave in because they wanted to, quote, give in? That was the best negotiating position that Europe had, and they need it. They need us to help them with NATO. They need us for a security guarantee. If you see Germany and you look at the percentage of GDP spent on defense in Europe, it's unbelievable to me to see Europe lag behind as far as it has with a ground war in Europe for the last 3 years. So Trump is pushing NATO. Trump is pushing Europe. Trump is pushing the United States. Like he's pushing everywhere he's pushing has been in the right spot, Benny. And Europe didn't just, quote, cave, give in, or take a knee. Like they did the best they could on the negotiating side, and they need us. They desperately need us for defense technology. They desperately need us for energy. And we intend to help our allies over there with defense tech and energy.
Why has it been that there's a sort of boomer core generation, Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, sort of the archetypes of it, that have constantly sacrificed American treasure and productivity and manufacturing to China throughout their entire careers? We've detailed some of the shady deals that have happened, how filthy rich some of these members of Congress have gotten through deals with China. the sell-off of American farmland that you highlighted here on your X account that I encourage everybody to follow. Why has our leadership been so traitorous to the American worker in sacrificing all of the good things we had going here to the communists, Kyle?
I'll correct you, and I smile here because I basically agree with what you're saying. But when you look at Nancy Pelosi's stance, specifically as it relates to Taiwan and China, I actually have to give her an A+. Again, that is one place where I would give her an A+. But when I look at Mitch McConnell and I look at some of the boomer era Republicans and Democrats for that matter, there's this view like, again, Mitch is idiosyncratic. I mean, he married Elaine Chao, right? Elaine Chao's sister sat on the board of the Bank of China. The Chao family made their entire fortune in running shipping businesses in Asia with China as their primary customer. You don't get to sit on the board of the Bank of China unless you are a full high-ranking card-carrying communist, Benny. So there's a direct link there between McConnell and China, and it's impossible to overlook. And I FOIA'd, I don't know if you know this, I FOIA'd all member of Congresses, every members during the financial crisis, their financial holdings, just to understand how many were really invested in markets and how many weren't. And each member of Congress has to file an annual ethics and kind of asset holding with the Ethics Committee at Congress. McConnell had reported that his net worth was sub $1 million going into 2009. It had very, very few holdings. And then in 2009 or 10, I can't remember the year, he went to $20 million. And you say, well, what just happened? Well, Elaine Chao's dad gave them a gift of $20 million. So he recorded it as a net worth. And so it's interesting to me to see, again, the people at play, how they interconnect to the Chinese Communist Party, who does play an amazing game of infiltration, of coercion, of, again, overt bribery, covert bribery, special access. If you get special access to a Chinese market, it's a de facto bribe if they don't allow anyone else in, right? So what China is so good at is creating cheerleaders, both in the political realm and the capitalist realm, the billionaire realm. If they give someone like Ray Dalio special access, you get the first and only license for a while to raise hedge fund capital in China, or you get someone like Steve Schwartzman, where Blackstone gets to come in and do everything that it does with a special license, then they become the cheerleaders in the world. They say doing business with China is a great thing. It's enriching me. It's doing a great, it's a great to do business with them. Then everyone else that shows up gets fleeced. So it's a genius move the way China operates with our political sphere as well as our investment sphere. And that was a long answer, but it's important to note that they do play a game where money and influence is something that they seek, and they get it because they can fund all kinds of NGOs in America to do all kinds of things that both divide us and create influence.
Yeah, since you're the subject matter expert here, Kyle, perhaps we could close with this. How is the Trump strategy with tariffs working with China? Is China in as fragile of a position as some of the sky is falling people would warn about? Like, for instance, Scott Bessent at the Treasury is constantly talking about structural weaknesses within China. Your take on this, how should this end?
Yeah, Scott's 100% correct about this, Benny. China, the architecture of China's system is, you think about our system going into the financial crisis, we had about 1 times our GDP in bank assets. That's how you look at kind of leverage on balance sheet. Then if you remember, we had a bunch of off balance sheet leverage with the non-banks. So we're about 1.7 times going in to the financial crisis. China's almost 3.5 times their banking assets to GDP. And so they've only been at banking, Benny, for about 25 years. Since they ascended the WTO, that's how long they've been in, call it, advanced banking. So you've got a foundational problem with the architecture of their system. Then you've got a scenario where you see demographic curves hooking off of a cliff. The average fertility rate in China is like 1.2. and you need 2.1 just to sustain a population. So they have a massive population decline. They've got a banking system that's at least twice as levered as ours was going in, if you include our off-balance sheet financing. They've got 2 banks in China that have more assets than JP Morgan, which is, insane. Their economy, if we believe what they say, their economy is about 18 trillion. Ours is 30 trillion. How do they have 2 banks bigger than JP Morgan? Well, it doesn't make much sense unless you have a bunch of really bad loans on the books, Benny. Mm-hmm. So China is particularly vulnerable today. And that vulnerability is something that we are focused on, not only in our trade discussions with them, but in all of their military and combat modernization that they're working on. And that's why I'm so adamant about these H20 chips. We can't be helping China's AI machine with inference. That's what those chips do. And they immediately get sent to the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, where they're modernizing their AI infrastructure, they're modernizing their drones, they're modernizing their missile systems, their combat systems, all with AI, and they're doing it with our chips. So I think what we're doing, what Scott Bessent is doing by holding their feet to the fire in Stockholm is a great thing, but I don't think that this concept of appeasing Xi Jinping's a madman. He is looking for global primacy in every aspect of life, and he'll do it at any cost. So appeasing someone like that doesn't work. It just delays the problem, and it makes the problem bigger in the future. And so I think as we close, what we've got to do is stay tough on China. You called me a China hawk. I'd call myself a China realist. I like to try to understand where they're headed, and their grand strategy is clear. How many American administrations do you think believe they could tether China by engaging, by allowing them into the WTO, by giving them economic integration? We've tried that, and we've tried that really since 2002, and all we've gotten is them modernizing their military and being aggressive in the South China Sea and attacking us with cyber attacks and then pretending to be our friend. So, we've got to stop.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is quite severely the single largest foreign policy mistake of the entire boomer leadership era.
No doubt.
Is creating our new monsters. So
yeah,
the greatest generation vanquishes in their twilight years the Soviet threat, and then the boomer generation creates the next Soviet superstate by on purpose, Kyle.
Yeah, I would say that the pivot to China and the bet on China back in 2002, I think it was a decent bet back then, Benny, right? I mean, if you could teach them, look, they've got Taiwan next door. Taiwan's GDP per capita is 3 times what China's is. So Taiwan is kind of an example of what a democratized Western China would look like, right? A capitalist China. That's why one of the reasons Xi Jinping hates Taiwan is they're an example of what a thriving democracy would look like with Chinese characteristics. So I think the bear hug in 2002 was a decent bet. I think we immediately should have realized the lying, the cheating, the stealing, the cajoling, all the way through. We should have realized it was a bad bet sooner. Benny, we're just starting to realize that it was a horrible bet. So to your point, since 2016, they have kind of shown their true colors. And you've listened to Xi Jinping's speeches from 2017 on. He tells you what he's going to do. He's going to take Taiwan. He is going to secure that first island chain and start focusing on the second, which includes Guam. Like, this is a real problem. We should start listening to him.
Yeah, we should start listening to him, and not through the filter of Joe Biden. What's the famous quote? I stood at the foothills of the Himalayas, and he told me that America is
well,
good. It's a good one, right?
A better one was when Xi Jinping was in the Rose Garden of the White House. He told President Obama, he said, "I will not militarize the South China Sea. Yeah. We're just building some coral reefs and some islands there, and now you've got 10,000-foot runways with strategic bombers, fighters, missiles." Like they lied to our face in the White House Rose Garden, and we still engage these people like they're worth engaging. It's pretty crazy.
since we're on this topic, I just can't help myself. We got to load this. You got to load it, Klein. Got to load it. Yeah, here we go. Can't help myself. Just looking at Kamala Harris's face. I've been wanting to do this with you, Kyle, and I know we had a broken connection last time you tried to join the show. So just the Danny one, please. Load that one. Yeah, thank you. Okay, ready to go. Here's Joe Biden explaining. You say listen to Xi Jinping's words. Joe Biden did, and here's what he had to tell us about Xi Jinping's words.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was in the foothills of the Himalayas with Xi Jinping, traveling with him. I guess we traveled 17,000 miles when I was vice president. I don't know that for a fact. And we were sitting alone. I had an interpreter and he had an interpreter.
Look at Kamala's face. Look at her face. Look at that. She's trying to hold back. She's trying to hold back laughter. Yeah. You can see it. Look at her. Look at her chin. She's like trying to swallow the laughter. Yeah, quite a clip there, Kyle.
Just imagine where our country would be if she was our president.
Ugh. Yeah, that's right. Ugh, man. And Kamala holding back a laugh. I mean, we've never seen that. I've never seen anybody who more readily cackles for absolutely no reason, like the Joker. It's really something. Okay, well, we thank you, Kyle. Here's Kyle's tweet, by the way, about Mitch McConnell and his corrupt-ass family. You got to follow Kyle Bass on social media. Here's his X account right here. And, there's only a couple people you got to bribe in the federal government, Kyle. It's a pretty cheap date, actually, going out with America. You can just bribe like 5 key people with $20 million each. And, boy, you're set, right? What a bunch of bastards.
It's some of these things are in plain sight, and we need to at least talk about them more.
Yeah, that's right. If you want to hear more truth, 311,000 people already follow Kyle on social media here on X. You should be one of them, one of the smartest financial minds out there. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, Benny.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so much news to get to. You'll find it on our channel today. More important things happening today with President Trump around the world. He's in Scotland today. What day does he meet the king? ALX, I don't know. Is that tonight? We'll find out. When does Trump meet the king? When does the king meet Trump? I don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, we know the King of Kings. All the earthly kings, of course, can fade away, and the King of Kings will all be there, and that's exactly what's going to happen. In the end, we win, and we win by reading our verse of the day, 1 Corinthians 16:13. Watch, stand fast in the faith, be brave, and be strong. Something that we pray for every single day. The Patriot Prayer, right? Make me fast and accurate. Pray for strength and wisdom every single day. I get down on my knees. I do it in front of my kids every single night. I show them, like, Daddy prays, and Daddy submits himself to the will of God, and you should too. I don't pretend to be anything other than a simple Christian. I'm not a particularly wise man. That's why I pray for these things, and at the very least, we're honest. So we're honest with you, and we can bring honesty to the news cycle. That's what we try to do every single day. Salt and light, ladies and gentlemen. Join us, please, by subscribing to our podcast. If you subscribe, this is the RSS feed. This is the actual physical podcast. If you do that, that helps us grow and muscularly throw our weight around as we are doing right now on an exponential growth trajectory in order to save this nation for our children. That's pretty much it. That's the entire motive of this program. And ladies and gentlemen, to remind you every single day that in the end, we win. It's your boy Benny. See ya.
Hi, it's me, Wally the Wood Chipper. It's a fine day today when I sure do wonder when that list will come out. We got Russia, a shooter, and fake news CNN, but where are the Epstein clients? I'm starving. I'm getting pretty hungry. When are the Epstein files going to be released?
So, where the truth gon' be? Faith and freedom on on your TV screen. Stand up strong, battle through the night. The Benny Show's here, bringing liberty to light. From the speeches to debates, Benny sharp like a blade, cutting through the lies, watch the truth cascade. With the warrior's heart, this man never fades. You know it's prime time when Benny invades. From saving the nation to stories untold, the Benny Show's a storm, see the truth unfold. Stay in the loop, let freedom take hold. Salting all the libs, soul never sold. It's the Benny Show, where the truth gon' be. Faith and freedom on your TV screen. Stand up strong, battle through the night. The Benny Show's here, bringing liberty to light. Liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. From the speeches to debates, Benny sharp like a blade, cutting through the lies, watch the truth cascade. With the warrior's heart, this man never fades. You know it's prime time when Benny invades. From saving the nation to stories untold, the Benny Show's a storm, see the truth unfold. Stay in the loop, let freedom take hold. Salting all the libs, soul never sold. It's the Benny Show, where the truth gon' be. Faith and freedom on your TV screen. Stand up strong, battle through the night. The Benny Show's here, bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light.